U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz responds to critics of President Donald Trump's Gaza takeover plan. And U.S. Border Patrol agents are detaining undocumented migrants as part of President Donald Trump's crackdown on illegal immigration. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our broadcast with the crisis in eastern Congo. Leaders from eastern and southern Africa are calling for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in eastern Congo, where M23 rebels are threatening to overthrow the Congolese government. The summit held in Tanzania on Saturday also urged Congo President Felix Tshisekedi to directly negotiate with the rebels. Tshisekedi, who attended the summit virtually, has previously said he would never talk to M23. The rebels have seized Goma, the biggest city in eastern Congo, following fighting that left nearly 3,000 dead and hundreds of thousands of displaced people. Over the past months, M23's advances have expanded its control over North Kivu province's lucrative coltan gold tin ore mines, uprooting thousands in what was already one of the world's most dire humanitarian crises. For more insight on the summit and the crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, VOA's Paul Ndiho spoke with political analyst Rike Mukonza.
The joined SADC and East African Community, SADC, which I think was chaired by the Tanzanian president. All these are efforts to get a diplomatic solution to the conflict in DRC. It appears the president of DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, and the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, they don't seem to trust each other that much, because you would recall that in the recent SADC East African Community joint summit, Tshisekedi opted to join the meeting virtually, which is not a very good sign in diplomatic terms. Why wouldn't he go and meet, you know, for example, Kagame physically at a meeting and ventilate issues? But we have also seen how President Paul Kagame is belligerent in terms of how he thinks about the conflict. He tells all and sundry that the conflict is essentially an internal conflict in DRC, where the government is trampling upon the rights of some of its citizens in the eastern DRC. It appears no one wants to find the other so that there can be peace. So it's a very complex matter.
South African troops have been victims who are deployed in the Congo, became victims of this war. They were killed. You've been following these scenarios. You've been following this story. What's your take on whatever is happening in Eastern DRC?
I think it's a very sad story, in the sense that lives have been lost, property has been destroyed, livelihoods have been disturbed. We have a number of people who are now in refugee camps because of the situation in Eastern DRC. You spoke about South Africa. South Africa to date has lost around 14 soldiers that died in the war there, being part of the peacekeeping mission of SADC and also of the United Nations. So it's not a case that as Africans we need to celebrate. It's a case that we all need to put our heads together and find a lasting solution to the conflict that exists in that area. We must take into cognizance, Paul, that this conflict is over 20 years old, and something must now give so that peace can be given a chance.
That was Ricky Mukonza, a political analyst and professor at Tshwane University of Technology in South Africa, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. Turning to the Middle East, U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has responded to critics of the Gaza takeover plan that U.S. President Donald Trump suggested. Meanwhile, the Israel-Hamas truce resulted in another successful hostage for prisoners exchange. VOA's Veronica Valderas-Iglesias has more.
The Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal continues to hold. Israeli troops withdrew Sunday from the Netzarim corridor that divides the Gaza Strip, and entire Palestinian families made their way back home to northern Gaza. What lies ahead for Gaza's inhabitants after the war ends, however, remains an open question. U.S. President Donald Trump has floated the idea of Gaza's population resettling in other countries and the United States taking over the Gaza Strip to rebuild it. Trump's national security advisor Mike Waltz responded Sunday to critics of the plan.
You can't get to post-construction. You can't make this the Paris of the Mediterranean like Beirut was back in the 70s and give these people a better life if you've got 1.8 million people living in absolute squalor in mountains and mountains and mountains of debris. For anyone, the media included, that doesn't like what he is proposing, come to us with a better plan.
Trump's plan has received support inside Israel, but the Arab world and the Palestinian leadership categorically reject it.
We need to rebuild the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is a very precious component of the land of the State of Palestine. It is part of our homeland, and we don't have a homeland other than the State of Palestine.
Meanwhile, Israelis celebrated the release of more hostages this weekend. 5 Thai workers who had been held by Hamas for more than a year reunited Sunday with their loved ones. And 183 Palestinian prisoners also reclaimed their freedom as part of the deal. Talks on the second phase of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal could resume in Qatar as soon as this week. Veronica Valderas-Iglesias, VOA News.
The presidents of Ukraine and the United States are looking to make a deal. This as world leaders meet in Munich this week to discuss, among other issues, the future of Kyiv's security. VOA's Arasha Basadi has the details.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shows reporters a once classified map pinpointing the location of his country's rare earth and other critical minerals.
These deposits are priceless. Huge amounts of money. Huge. That's why we need to protect them. So if we're talking about a deal, that's what the Americans want. Then let's do a deal.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's open to negotiations.
So we're looking to do a deal with Ukraine where they're going to secure what we're giving them with their rare earth and other things.
Trump's national security advisor Mike Waltz on Sunday echoed the president's desire to recoup U.S. aid to Ukraine through the country's natural resources. Rare earth minerals are important for the manufacture of electric motors and consumer electronics. Zelensky says less than 20% of Ukraine's resources are under Russian occupation. But he calls Ukraine's Dnipro region very rich and warns that if Russia controls those mineral deposits, it could feed them to U.S. adversaries like Iran or North Korea. Targeting the area, Ukrainian drone operators launched strikes against would-be invading Russian forces along the Dnipro River. Zelensky says Russia knows the location of critical resources back from Soviet-era geological surveys. Zelensky also says he has discussed with Trump the idea of housing U.S. liquefied natural gas in Ukraine's underground storage sites. Back in Kyiv, it was another night of air combat as Ukraine's Air Force says it shot down nearly half of 139 drones launched by Russia. No damage or casualties were reported by local officials. Meanwhile, German lawmakers last year approved a roughly $107 billion special fund to strengthen the country's military in response to Russia's war on Ukraine. The German army currently has around 179,000 troops, and according to AP, the country aims to reach 203,000 by 2031.
The situation in Europe has changed because of the war in Ukraine. So now where whole areas are changing and we need to get ready for maybe a war in the future, we need to fill up our reserves.
Ready, go.
World leaders will meet this week at the Munich Security Conference in Germany to discuss, among other subjects, support for Ukraine. The talks run from February 14th through the 16th. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
The U.S.-Mexico tariff showdown is on hold, but consumers and merchants of Mexican products are concerned about the financial impact if President Donald Trump moves forward with a 25% tariff on Mexican imports. Victor Hugo Castillo reports.
Oscar Garcia is one of the 65 million retired Americans living on Social Security benefit income. As he walks through the supermarket aisles, he worries how a potential price hike on Mexican products will impact his wallet and purchasing decisions if the Trump administration's tariff threats become a reality.
What are people with low salaries going to do? If we used to eat meat twice a week, now we'll have to cut back to once a week. Or maybe we won't be able to afford it at all.
For the past 2 years, Mexico has been the United States' top trading partner, followed by Canada, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. The vibrant trading relationship is evident in the thousands of trucks crossing international bridges every day. Mario Garcia works for Mayjeff Produce in McAllen, which specializes in imports from Mexico. He says he's concerned how tariffs could disrupt his business.
Most stores and supermarkets rely on Mexican products. So what's going to happen if prices go up from Mexico all the way to the consumer? It's all a chain reaction.
President Trump has linked the use of tariffs to efforts to stop the flow of drugs and migrants crossing illegally into the U.S. On February 1st, he announced 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada, but paused them temporarily 2 days later after leaders of both countries agreed to strengthen border security. Still, imposing tariffs would ripple through supply chains, warns Roberto Cruz Hernandez, Secretary of the Federation of National Chambers of Commerce in Tamaulipas, Mexico.
The maquiladora industry, which includes many transnational companies, many of them American, that manufacture or assemble in our country, will also be affected by the additional costs these tariffs would bring.
While manufacturers and importers would feel the direct impact, U.S. consumers like Hilda Gonzalez believe they'll see the effects in higher prices at the checkout counter.
They're going to raise prices on products, and who's going to pay the difference? We are.
If tariffs go into effect, retirees like Garcia are afraid they will have to cut back even more on their spending. For others, it means they'll have to work harder to buy what they need. Victor Hugo Castillo, VOA News, McAllen, Texas.
After the recent discovery of a clandestine tunnel connecting the U.S. and Mexican cities of El Paso, Texas, and Juarez, Mexican authorities have launched an operation to uncover other illegal underground passages. Veronica Villafañe narrates this, reported by Cesar Contreras.
This illegal secret passage connects Mexico, Ciudad Juarez, and the U.S. city of El Paso in Texas. The tunnel under the Rio Grande River is a little over a meter wide and nearly 2 meters high. It connects with a storm sewer system and is equipped with lighting and ventilation.
It is lined with wooden beams, as you will be able to see. It has beams, it has wood to prevent collapses.
Authorities believe this underground route was used to smuggle both migrants and drugs from Mexico to the United States. U.S. Border Patrol agents in El Paso discovered the tunnel on January 9th during an inspection of a storm drain and began sealing it on the northern side of the border a week later. Mexican authorities have started closing the tunnel on their end and say they're looking for others.
We have increased search activities to detect other tunnels, if there are any, and our presence will be maintained permanently.
The Mexican government has increased patrols at strategic points in Juarez to prevent migrants from becoming trapped in tunnels or falling victim to human traffickers as they attempt to cross the border illegally.
Our main purpose is to protect migrants and ensure they don't risk their lives trying to enter the United States illegally. However, after the discovery of this tunnel, we're also focused on searching for other tunnels in the area.
Investigations are ongoing, and Mexican authorities have reiterated their commitment to shutting down illegal routes along the border. For Cesar Contreras in Ciudad Juárez, Mexico, Veronica Villafañe, VOA News.
Namibians are mourning the death of their founding president, Sam Nujoma, who passed away on Saturday after being hospitalized in the capital, Windhoek. Nujoma was among the last of a generation of African leaders who fought to free their countries from colonial white minority rule. For more Nujoma's legacy, I'm joined live from Windhoek, Namibia, by Henry Shimutwikeni, a Namibian political analyst. Henry, great to have you on the show. How are Namibians remembering the late president, Sam Nujoma?
Thank you very much for having me. I think the country is mourning, but at the same time, the founding president is going to be his contribution to the liberation and independence of Namibia, and also his contribution after independence in terms of nation building, because Namibia is a very ethnically diverse country, and one of the focuses and legacies of his post-independence leadership as president, and even after being president, was uniting a country of diverse people. The banner or the name, which he used to say, "One Namibia, one nation." So I think that's really what is going to be remembered for those two. As much as the country, also celebrating his life and his legacy, because he lived a full life, passing on in his 90s.
How would you characterize his 3 decades in exile and how that shaped his career as a leader?
I think the time that our founding father spent in exile shaped a lot of our post-independence international, basically our diplomatic and international approach. In that a lot of the countries where either he himself spent a few years or time in other countries, which we continue to have very close ties with today, and it shaped his character too, because he had the benefit of interacting with the likes of Nyerere, Kaunda, and other great African leaders who also fought to liberate their countries. So I think it shaped him a lot, but also went on then to guide a lot in terms of the direction that the country took, the countries that Namibia has relations with, our very international approach when it comes to countries that have similar challenges, such as what we saw in terms of our intervention in the aspect of Palestine and Israel last year. And so I think that really shaped the country a lot, because we are, as Namibia, a product of international solidarity through him and his efforts during the time that he was in exile.
Well, we understand he did a lot to kind of put the ethnically divided country together, but how would you very quickly say that young people can learn from Nujoma?
Look, I think a lot of the young people who hear about Nujoma are quite privileged to have lived at the same time as him, even though they themselves were not part of the struggle or have no remembrance of it, but they're really privileged to be alive or have been alive at the same time as one of the last basically African giants of his stature. So I think, in as much as a lot of young people are perhaps not as interested, we're talking about 35 years of struggle, but they do have a lot to learn from him, and we're also privileged that he he already has a biography of his written. It's called The Way Others. I think they have a lot to learn in terms of his contribution, and we're also lucky in that his contribution, both before and after, is already documented in his biography.
Right. Henry, thank you so much for talking to us. Henry Shimutukeni is a Namibian political analyst. Still to come, we'll tell you about the crackdown on illegal immigration in the United States. Stay with us.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
You're watching Africa 54 from the Voice of America headquarters here in Washington, D.C. In other news, the formation of a new Sudanese government is expected to happen after the recapture of Khartoum is completed, according to the military sources. This announcement came a day after Army head Abdel Fattah al-Burhan said he would form a technocratic wartime government. A technocracy is a form of government in which the decision makers are selected based on their expertise in a given area of responsibility. The Aga Khan IV was laid to rest on Sunday at a private ceremony in Aswan, Egypt. His son, 53-year-old Rahim al-Husseini, has been named as the Aga Khan V, the spiritual leader of the world's millions of Ismaili Muslims, in accordance with his father's will. The Aga Khan is considered by his followers to be a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad and is treated as a head of state. Many arrests of undocumented migrants in the U.S. have been in the western state, California, where one city is trying to break with the state and cooperate with federal immigration agencies. Ginia Dulot reports from Huntington Beach.
California is a state that limits local police cooperation with federal immigration enforcement, barring them from acting as immigration agents or making arrests solely on civil immigration violations. Within this so-called sanctuary state, the city of Huntington Beach has declared itself a non-sanctuary city for illegal immigration for the prevention of crime.
If an undocumented person commits some kind of crime, especially a heinous crime, I want them removed. I want us to have every level of law enforcement to keep our community as safe as possible. And if you take that link out, that level of law enforcement out, we might be releasing somebody who we don't want back into our community.
Maido is with the Harbor Institute, which provides research and policy support to local pro-immigrant organizations. She says there is no evidence that sanctuary cities are less safe.
Study after study has proven that sanctuary cities not only don't increase crime, they actually reduce crime. And so for Huntington Beach politicians to be invested in trying to promote this anti-sanctuary policy actually shows that they're not invested in promoting public safety.
Local restaurant owner Charlie Zabla backs Huntington Beach being a non-sanctuary city.
By crossing the borders and coming here illegally, you already committed a crime. You broke the law. And that's not acceptable. I came here the legal way. I did the right thing right. I waited in line. I paid my dues. It took me 12 years to become a citizen.
Unlawful presence in the U.S. is a civil violation, not a criminal offense. Illegal entry is a misdemeanor. Re-entering the country illegally after being removed is a felony, punishable by up to 2 years in prison. President Donald Trump's executive order, called Protecting the American People Against Invasion, would deny federal funds to all sanctuary jurisdictions. It is not yet clear what federal funds would be cut to which jurisdictions, including California. Making itself a non-sanctuary city is a largely symbolic move for Huntington Beach, since they don't control local law enforcement, says University of California, Irvine law professor Annie Lai.
This declaration by the city is going to have limited impact because the cities don't have their own jails generally. The entity that controls the jails is the Orange County Sheriff's Department. That's a different decision maker.
When California enacted its sanctuary law in 2017, the first Trump administration argued in court that it interfered with immigration authorities enforcing federal law. A circuit court of appeals ruled for the state, and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review the case. Jenya Dulo, VOA News, Huntington Beach.
The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Kansas City Chiefs in the National Football League Super Bowl championship game 40-22 Sunday in New Orleans. The Chiefs had been slightly favored to win the game and make history as the first NFL franchise to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls. But the Eagles jumped out to a 24-0 lead by halftime, thanks to a dominating defense that stifled Kansas City's star quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, and forced him into throwing 2 interceptions, including one the Eagles returned for a touchdown. The score was 34-0 late in the third quarter when the Chiefs finally scored. Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts was named the game's most valuable player with 221 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Before the kickoff, a ceremony honored those killed and wounded in a truck ramming New Year's Day terror attack in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, as well as first responders. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.